What's up, guys? Tim Little. Welcome back to TacticalBassin. Today we are talking Magnum size worms, giant worms for summertime fishing. I love throwing a big worm. I love throwing big heavy Carolina rig, big heavy shaky head, something with a big presentation to try and trigger and pull those big bites during the summertime. It's hot out here right now. I'm in the shade, pulled back into a little cut to get out of the sun, but I wanted to take a few minutes to kind of talk to you guys about some of my favorite baits, the gear I use, the colors of worms I use, the types of tails, those sort of things to help you guys catch more fish on big worms. So right off the bat, the four major ways that I rig a big worm. One is going to be the Carolina rig. You know, for those of you guys that don't know what a Carolina rig is, about 4 or 5 feet up the line you have a tungsten weight or some kind of weight with a bullet, with a bobber stop and a swivel. You have that attached to your leader line. And then down here you have your hook with your big worm. The benefit of the Carolina rig, if you're fishing deep rock piles, you're fishing long tapering points, you can throw a 1 ounce weight out there, fired out there, way out there deep, right, and just drag it, but you have just the worm itself down at the end of the line, so that thing's just kind of just soaking, just very little action, kind of floating, depends on the worm you're using. But the Carolina rig, you have that constant bottom contact with the weight, but you have that big meal, that big presentation sitting there, you know, kind of dancing around, suspending in front of the bass's face. So Carolina rig, you know, you could throw a 1/4 ounce all the way up to a 1 ounce if you want. I really like throwing a Carolina rig, 1/2 ounce, 3/4 ounce, whatever. That is up to you. The next is going to be a big shaky head. This is actually This is a Magnum shaky head by Dirty Jigs. This is the 8-inch bullworm by Strike King. Real thick presentation. This bait has a lot of movement in the water, and if I want to keep that constant bottom contact and the fish are down, if I'm graphing them down on the bottom, this will get down to them, whereas the Carolina rig, it takes a little bit longer to do. But the big shaky head, your big worms, again, you're going to fish this just like a jig. You're going to fish it just like your normal shaky head you would in any other time of the year, but you're just upsizing the gear. Bigger head, bigger hook, bigger worm, trying to get those bigger bites. Another way to rig it is just going to be straight up a Texas rig. A sliding weight. You can peg it or not peg it, that's totally up to you. But a Texas rig, nice little 1/2 ounce, 3/4 ounce tungsten weight in front of a 5, 6, or 7/0 hook, and put your favorite big worm on there, and you're golden, guys. Docks, rock piles, points, any of that, ledges, humps, any of that stuff, that is where these bigger worms will shine. The last way to rig it is actually a drop shot, a power shot. You know, take your 17 to 20 pound fluorocarbon if you want, put on a big hook, and same weight, you know, a 1/4, 1/2, 3/8, whatever you want to be, 1 ounce. And now you have a drop shot presentation, but with a giant worm on there. This is the 10-inch bullworm by Strike King. Here's the 8-inch. You can kind of see the size comparison. And this is actually Strike King's, their big hook. I think this is a 7/0 hook. It pairs up great with these bigger worms. Just like all the videos, guys, down below in the video description, I will link to all the hooks, the line, the rods, the reels, and of course the worms down below. And you guys can click on that. It'll be easy for you. But there are some really cool companies out there that make worms that are Magnum size. I think the Upton's comes in all the way up to a 20-inch worm. This is the 13-inch straight tail. So this is almost like your 6-inch straight tail robo worm. That's what this bait is, except for this one is 13 inches. The man's jelly worm, that's another great one to go with. This is actually the 8-inch, so it's not super giant. Again, these things get 10, 12, 14 inches. The man's jelly worm is a good one to go with. That's one of my favorite for Carolina rigging. It's got that different tail on it that kind of cups the water and dances around, a lot more action. What else? I talked about the bull worm. Some more Uptons. That's their big 10-inch worm. Bull worm, man's jelly worm, and the Uptons. You know, those are some of my favorite big worms. The ones that I went to grab out of the garage to show you guys, the 10 or 12 inch, the power worm, that's got a big curly tail on it. And the Zoom, the old monster, that's another great worm. So again, I'll link to those down there. If I want to, say I'm drop shotting or I'm power shotting, I'm gonna go with that straight tail worm, just like a normal drop shot, except for I'm upsizing all my gear. If I am dragging, I will go with a worm that has a little curl in it. That way it gets a little more action as you're kind of dragging it, you know, through the rock pile or whatever you're fishing. But if you guys haven't went out and played around with throwing big worms in the summertime, man, it is a lot of fun. You can catch a 10-pounder on it. You can catch a 10-incher on it. You'll be amazed how small of actually bass you can catch on the big worm while trying to go for those giant fish. So it doesn't just catch giants. I was out on Lake Fork with Keith Combs, and we were throwing big worms, and he was getting frustrated because he kept catching like 10 and 12-inch bass, but eventually we started getting bigger fish. So don't be afraid, or don't think it's too big to catch your small, average, and giant sized bass, guys. So rods. If I'm throwing a Carolina rig setup, I'm going to go with a longer rod. That way it allows me to use a longer leader. Remember, the Carolina rig, you got your weight up top, you got a leader line, and then your hook, weightless worm at the back. So the longer your rod, the longer leader it allows you to use. I usually use between a 4 and 6 foot leader, depends on what I'm fishing. But great rod for that is going to be the 895. This is the Loomis rod. It's actually a 7 foot 5 inch, and it's a 5-power rod. So this will a 1/4 to 1 ounce. So this is a good jig rod, and it's a great Carolina rig rod. Again, you want that longer rod for a Carolina rig setup. I'm not going to get into all the different details on the rods. I will link them down below. Another favorite of mine for throwing the Carolina rig is the Dobyns, the 784. This is an awesome jig rod. Any of you guys that throw jigs or like to throw jigs a lot, you can pretty much use all of your jig fishing gear for these big worms, these big presentations, because the weights themselves are going to be pretty close to the same weights you use when you're jig fishing, right? 1/2 ounce, 3/8, 3/4, maybe a 1 ounce. So any of your jig rods will work for this. If you are throwing a Carolina rig though, and you want to give yourself some extra leader room, go with a longer rod. The 784, that's a 7 foot 8, 4-power rod. Nice tip on it, and I love that rod. Super universal. I A-rig on it and everything. 893, the Loomis 893. It's a little bit lighter rod. It's a 3-power, right? So you can get away with your lighter Texas rigs, your lighter Shaky heads. But that's it, guys. I typically throw braid to leader if I'm Carolina rigging. I will throw braid to a swivel to my leader line, and you can use either mono or fluorocarbon, depends on the type of fishing you like doing, the type of fishing line you like to use. I typically use mono because it floats, and it again, it suspends that bait up in front of the face, right? What else? So big worms, I talked about, a handful of brands I like. Here's a box I set up right here. This is hopefully you guys can see this and I won't dump everything out. This is a Strike King bullworm box I put together. Has a bunch of different size heads, different weights. Oh, let's talk about colors. glad I opened this box up. So you can see I have 4 different colors in there. I got a morning dawn color, I got a prism shad color, I got a green pumpkin-ish color, and a June bug-ish color. Those are typically those types of those shades of colors. Those you know, your pinks, your prisms, your clears, your green pumpkins, and your June bugs, your black and blues. Those are going to be the 4 basic colors that I'm going to use. I'm going to use the June bug, you know, the black and blue or the June bug in your dirty, really stained water. These darker baits, they stand out better in that murky water. So that's where I'm gonna go with the real dark worms. My favorite here on Clear Lake in the summer is a June bug. You know, if you're throwing a trick worm, no matter whatever worm fishing you're doing, some kind of purple June buggy color. If you're throwing a robo worm, margarita mutilator 3, everybody preaches that color. And then shaky head or trick worm, I'm gonna go with you know, something in the June bug color. Black and blue, I typically throw at night if I'm doing some summer fishing. You guys want to have a lot of fun, go out to your favorite rock pile at night and throw a 12 or 14-inch worm and see what you guys catch. But morning dawns and the prism colors, I'm gonna go with these when the water is clearer. I really like the morning dawn color in the early springtime, but typically in the summertime here on Clear Lake, the water gets pretty dirty, so I don't use this color a lot. But if I go to some of the reservoirs, that's what I will throw. Again, your green pumpkins, that's a universal color. You can throw it in dirty water, you can throw it in clear water. That is an all-around just great choice. So colors, I keep it simple. I just talked about 4 or 5 colors. That's all you need to fish pretty much every condition and water color, water clarity that you're gonna have, guys. So if you guys have any questions, please leave those down below in the comments section. I know I kind of blew through this stuff, but I'm out here, it's hot, I got sweat dripping in my eyes, and I want to get back out to fishing, guys. But if you guys like that video, remember, hit the like button. Remember, subscribe to our channel. Matt and I were doing 3 videos a week for you. We appreciate you guys. Have a good one.